My message for leaders is, listen, the world's changing. The expectations have changed. The workforce has changed. The train has left the station now. People who are not like us are not going away. So you either get on board on the train or you get run over by the train.
Welcome back to On the Clock, where we speak with powerful women about all the ways they're making their moments matter. I'm your host, Elisa Gums. Today, we're chatting about leadership, and particularly how we can all tap into new ways of leading that work in today's rapidly changing workplaces. Joining us is former C-suite executive Stephanie Chung, who's a board member, a keynote speaker, and the best-selling author of Ally Leadership, How to Lead People Who Are Not Like You. Stephanie, we're so excited to have you here on the Clock. How are you today?
I am good. It's so good to see you, Elisa. Always nice to spend time with you. So I'm excited to be here.
Feeling is mutual. We love your energy and we love how open you are. So I know we're going to get into some very good topics today. You're going to share the real things.
Exactly. I will do my best. How's that?
That's a deal. So before we get into the book, I'd love to spend some time on your career. Can you walk us through what your professional journey has been like?
Absolutely. So one of the things is I always like to give a credit where credit is due. So the first part that's really near and dear to my heart is the fact that I grew up a military brat. So my dad was a master sergeant in the U.S. Air Force. So I literally grew up around planes my entire life. So Alicia, I was that girl that knew exactly what I wanted to do because I would hear planes take off and land every day of my life for pretty much my entire childhood. So with that said, I knew that I wanted to be in aviation. So the problem was, though, that whenever I would see aviation depicted in TV or film or magazines or anything like that, I would see it if you were a man, you were a pilot. And if you were a woman, you were a flight attendant. But unfortunately, back in the day, I'm a lot older. I'm an old hag there. So way back in the day, whenever, you just would not see people of color. So though I would see if you're a woman, you're a flight attendant, or if you're a guy, you're a pilot, but none of those pictures ever looked like me or you for that matter, right? And so therefore, though I knew what I wanted to do, I didn't know what I could do or what was accessible to me because I'd never seen a person of color depicted as an aviator. So fast forward, the very first job that I ever had was parking planes and loading luggage at the Boston Logan Airport, which I loved that job, might I add. It was so much fun. If I could still yet make the kind of living I need, right, I'd still be doing that job. It was so much fun. But and then to make extra money, I would go work upstairs in the ticket counter. So one day, one of the executives for the airlines, he actually saw me working at the counter and he came over to me and he's like, Steph, every time I come through this airport, I see you. I see you serving customers with a smile on your face. I think we have you in the wrong position. I think you should be in sales. So that started my journey. So I ended up selling for the airlines for many, many years. And then I got recruited from the airlines into private aviation, where I sold private aviation services, private jets, and then got promoted, became a person that oversaw a private jet team where my entire team sold, private jets. And then from there, I got recruited and became the president of a private jet company. So that appointment made me the first Black person in U.S. history to ever lead a major private aviation company. And then from there, I ended up getting recruited with Wheels Up. So I was the chief growth officer for Wheels Up. And I was part of the team that helped take that company public. And that was the first time a private aviation company actually had gone public. So that was super exciting. Now, what I do is on the speaking circuit. So I spend most of my time speaking at Fortune 500 companies. I've written a book, which I know that we'll talk about in a minute. And then I also serve on a board called XTI. It's a publicly held board, and it's a aircraft manufacturer. So we're making a brand new jet that should come into market in the next 4 to 5 years. And it's a jet that flies, it takes off and lands like a helicopter, but it's a private jet. So think of it as a private jet now being able to land on your estate. So it's pretty cool. It will be the first time in our aviation sector that this particular type of aircraft is out and available. So it's pretty exciting to be working on that project with them.
I love that sentence. Think of it as a private jet that lands on your estate. Like that
Exactly.
sentence I want to hear coming from Black women executives.
So when you're ready, you call me girl because I got the hookup for you.
Absolutely. I also love that it's a story of passion, that, it's been like a genuine love of yours for your whole life, and
Yeah.
you have pursued it and made it to the top of
Yes.
that industry, making history, as you said.
Thank you.
Um, because you've done what so many professionals have set out to do in terms of making it to the C suite, how did you, as your level was changing, as you looked around and your viewpoint was changing, how did your views of leadership change?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, I think I had an unfair advantage, if you will, because I was a military kid. I actually grew up seeing leadership my whole life. So, think of it this way, right? And I'm incredibly grateful for this because when I was a little girl and I would, let's say, walk on the base and, hold my dad's hand, here's what I'm watching as a little girl. I'm watching either him salute someone or someone salute him. Right. I'm looking at soldiers when I'm standing there at the bus stop waiting for the bus to pick me up for school. I'm seeing them run and do calisthenics and do all the stuff that they're doing. I'm watching them do more by 7 a.m. than most of us have done all day, right? I'm also watching, our armed forces that, they don't have wrinkly shirts on, like the shirts are pressed, the shoes are shining, the pants have creases, their hair's in place, they're, built physically fit. I'm looking at excellence as a little girl. And so also living on the base, because I always lived on active Air Force bases, I was that kid that moved every 2 years of my life because of what my dad did. So whenever we would be on any bases, it was cause and effect. Meaning, if I did something stupid, right? Let's say I'm a teenager and I'm speeding on base, then I don't get called into the commander's office. My father does. Right. And so what you do is you get to see leadership and excellence, quite frankly, because we could all, one could argue that we've got the best armed forces, the men and women out there in the world. And so I got to grow up around that. So I came into corporate already having a good sense about leadership. I probably didn't know what the words were to use for it, but I'd always seen it literally from the day I was born. Now, fast forward to really put a little bit more meat on the bones for your question. When I got into corporate and I started to see leadership, and let's be real, leadership in corporate is not what I was used to seeing, right? I'm used to seeing like solid, elite type of leadership. And in corporate, sometimes it's clunky and messy, and you got to work really hard to get that type of skill set because most people don't have that level of leadership, right? So again, I was blessed to see it coming in. And then because I had an example, Alicia, of what it looked like, I then challenged myself that I wasn't going to be a mediocre leader like I was seeing a lot in corporate because I knew what excellence and elite level looked like because I have only been seeing it since I was a little girl. So for me, that was a challenge to, even though I thought I was, good or better than the next guy, you know what I mean? It was like, that's not good enough because I've seen elite leadership at the ultimate level. And that's where I was holding my standards to.
I think the other thing about corporate is that so many corporate leaders were never trained to be
Right.
leaders. I mean, I all of my training was to become a journalist, and that's all I ever thought about. And the first time I was leading people, I was like, "Wait a minute, how did this happen?" Like,
Exactly.
and everyone sort of just pieces it together on their own.
Mhm.
How would you describe your leadership style?
Yeah, and I think that's such a fair point. I'm glad that you actually brought it up because what I do now is really try to challenge companies and leaders that shouldn't be the case. Because I was like you, right? I was a salesperson coming up through the ranks, and a lot of times what happens in organizations is they take the top salesperson and then they go poof, now you run the team. And there's no training on, well, how do I run this team, right? I'm supposed to now bring in a bigger quota and lead all these folks, and you've never really invested any time, energy, or resources into helping me understand that. So I think that's a fair comment, what you're saying. Here's what I would say as far as leadership is concerned. My particular style, I'll tell you, people should be able to classify it and define or determine or describe your leadership in just words. And so I remember asking people who I've led so many people in this particular industry, and so I remember asking them, a few of them, we were all together, and I was like, "You guys, how would you describe my leadership? You all worked with me and worked for me, and you've gone on and do much greater things." And the words that they kept using, Elisa, was three things. Steph, you're fun, you're fair, you're tough. And when I thought about that, I was like, okay, that's actually, I think, a really good assessment because I do like to have fun. I think we're all working hard, we're running fast, right? And we're all spending so much time together in our corporations or organizations. So how do we not? Let's have some fun, right? It doesn't need to be that serious. I always say, like, especially in my world, I'm like, listen, we sell jets to rich people. It is not. We are not saving, world peace and right, and curing cancer. Like, come on, let's keep it real. So we need to have fun, right? But fair, my dad, when I got my very first leadership job, I remember I called my father. Now, mind you, he's a master sergeant in the U.S. Air Force, and I really wanted to do a good job. And so I called him. I was like, "Dad, they just promoted me. I now have this team. I want to do a really good job. What's some advice that you could give me?" And he said to me two things that I still, I still lead this way. And he says, "Steph, always remember to protect your team, and always remember there's two sides of every story." And so when my team says, "Steph, you're fair," what that means is, as an example, whenever I was leading a team, it was really clear for my team, I would tell them, never, ever, ever, if you have a problem, like on this team, we are going to be each other's brothers and sisters and keepers, right? This is how this team's going to function. We're either going to all win together or we're going to all lose together. So if you have a problem with one of your colleagues, everybody knew whatever you do, don't go to Steph's office and talk about it, right? They're like, you better take it up with whoever you have a problem with, right? And then if you two can't settle it together, then the two of you can come in and the three of us can talk about it to try to resolve it. So I've always prided myself on trying to figure out what's the second side of the story. So that's where the fair comes in. And then the tough is, listen, I'm a child of a soldier, right? My father always drilled in my head, the mission has to be completed. We either win or we lose. Now, seems super simplistic, but again, coming through the sales arena, and it is that simple in sales. You either hit your quota or you don't, right? You either win or you lose. And so for me, I've always, made sure that my teams are really clear that I do demand excellence, and I'm unapologetic about it. Now, I'm going to give you excellence, and I'm also going to do what is different than what you and I came up through the ranks. I'm going to make sure that you're equipped, that you have the tools, that everybody's out of your way so that you can get your job done. So I'm going to set the scene. I'm going to do what I can to be the forerunner to set you up for success. And in return, I expect excellence in return.
Yeah. Are there any particular challenges that you've had over the years as you've been a manager that stand out to you as an example where your leadership style was really honed?
Mm. Well, okay, let me rephrase it. So, coming up through the ranks of a all male dominated industry, and specifically rich white male dominated industry, I didn't have any challenges. No, Alicia.
It was a
Kind of
piece of
question is
cake.
that? What are you talking about, girl? Come again? It was all rainbows and unicorns. So now with that said, obviously I'm joking, right? But yes, I still have some scars I'm traumatized, right? But here's what I will say is I loved my industry. I love leadership. I'm in the industry still, so I have a really good time with it. But there are certain parts that did hone my skill set. So I'll give you an example, and I talk about this in the book. I actually had a employee that I didn't like. And I think in leadership, we never talk about that. In leadership, what happens, especially on social media, there's people blowing up social media and how they don't like their boss or how leaders need to do better and so on and so forth, right? But the leaders never get to talk about, well, what about the one that you had that really stretched you, right? So, and I know, blink twice if you know what I'm talking about, Lisa, because I know your team probably watching this. So, but every leader knows what I'm talking about, right? And for me, this person's name was Melissa, but everybody's got a Melissa where you're just like, man, Lord, sweet Lord Jesus. You know what I mean? This person is stretching me. And so that was something, she was one of these folks that the first week in, she missed an appointment, didn't come in uniform, like anything that could go wrong, this all happened to her the very first week I hired her. And so the first week, I'm like, this what? Like, clearly I made a bad hiring decision. And so I was ready to just kinda cut my losses quickly because nothing she was doing was accurate or right, or and she brought the drama all the time. And so I just was kinda like, "Okay, this was a bad decision, chalk it up to the mistake and, like, cut this and keep it moving." Um, but then I, decided to kinda step back and take a beat and figure out this is not normal, like, something's off. So I remember flying down to go take her to lunch, just so I could get to know her better, because 'cause she'd only been there a week, right? By this time, she'd probably been there 2 weeks. And I took her to lunch, and what I learned about her is that her mom had died in a, car crash, hit by a drunk driver unexpectedly when she was 12 years old. So now she's entering the teenage years, which is really, you always need your mom, but you really need your mom during certain times. So now she's entering the teenage years. Her mom's gone. She's being raised by a really, really strict father. He was from a different culture, and he just really had very strong opinions about women. And so, raising her, he raised her in a very strict format. And then she had two rambunctious brothers. So, during the time that it was pivotal for her to understand how to maneuver as a woman in a workplace, and especially a woman in a workplace in a male dominated space, and all the things that we kind of take for granted, she didn't have anybody there to teach her. Who taught her was reality TV. That's what she watched and observed. So that's how she dressed, that's how her makeup looked, and that's how she handled her emotions or didn't handle her emotions, right? Was all based on what she saw from reality TV. Once I got the full scope of her story, then I didn't see her as a project, but I saw her as like, wow, this girl has gotten the short end of some sticks. And now I see her as a project, but in a positive way. So how can I help her learn how to maneuver through the corporate arena, and especially as a woman in a male dominated space? So it changed my heart and it changed how I led, because what I realized is, though it wasn't a life experience that I was used to, but it certainly was hers. And it was probably the beginning of making me realize that when you lead people who are not like you, meaning, she was a woman of color. So in that sense, we had that as a commonality, but she was nothing like me. Right. We had a different lived experience. And so it really made me start to appreciate. I think that's the beginning of my journey of learning how to lead people who are not like you, and still realizing that they don't come from your same background or maybe have your same communication skills or educational background or whatever. They still have value. And as a leader, my job is to figure out what is their gift and their talent and to pull that forward. That's my job. And so, I'm grateful that I had somebody who stretched me so much on the front end, because it really took my leadership to a different level. So much so that I wrote a book about it. So,
Speaking of your book,
there you go. You see what I did there, Alicia?
yes, just for me. Thank you. There are so many books about leadership. What did
Yeah.
you feel was missing from the conversation that called you to write this one?
Oh, and thank you for saying that, because it really was a calling that I do believe. So here's what's really interesting is, as you know, I'm a professional speaker, and so my speakers bureau is really the ones who said, "Hey, listen, Steph, you get off stage and people keep asking, like, does she have a book? So you need to go write a book." And at the time, I was also working executive. I just didn't have time to write a book because that's a big commitment, right? But then my schedule started to change and fluctuate, and now all of a sudden I had the time. And what I wanted to do is to make sure that I didn't just write a book that they were telling me to write, but I would write a book that I felt like I could truly add value to leadership, because I know leadership is hard. And so I went away. I always say I went away in the woods for 5 days by myself, and no telephone, no internet, no nothing. Like, I literally went away to kind of quiet the noise so I could get some clarity on what type of book I should write. And the first 3 days, I didn't even know I needed it, but the first 3 days, I'm a woman of faith, and so the first 3 days, I was kinda, like, on my knees in worship, which was not what I expected. But days 4 and 5, I got clarity as to what the book should be about. And so when you say that I'm called to write this book, I really do believe that the book was a calling, and certainly, especially the season that we're in now as a society. So the book itself is really geared towards, listen, we've got 6 generations at work right now. That's unheard of. It's the first time in history. And so you and I both know that a boomer doesn't think the same way like a Gen Zoomer does, for an example. So every single generation has a different expectation, a different perspective, a different work ethic, right? The way they see work. On top of that, we have women as the majority of the world population, or at least in our country, we are the majority of the population. And that changes the dynamics at work because we women, we see things differently and we communicate differently. Then on top of that, you have the LGBTQ plus community, or you may have people, all the ethnic races are growing, non-ethnic race shrinking. That changes the dynamics at work. Then you may have colleagues that have, neurodiversities, or maybe they have different able-bodied folks. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So the bottom line is the today's modern workforce is complex. There is a lot of people who are not like each other, and they're not like the leader. And so how do we as leaders actually pull everybody's talents together and still set our people up to win? Because we have to take the societal changes, the workforce changes, and still figure out how do we create a team that wins, right? So that the company wins. So that's really the reason why I wrote the book, because what I found is, and this isn't a book, even though it's called, Ally Leadership, How to Lead People Who Are Not Like You. This is not a DEI book. This book is about ROI. I'm not as focused on DEI. I'm very focused on ROI, right? Because I think the conversation needs to shift. For me, whenever I would look at any books that were out there about leading people who are not like you, it was typically a book towards men, or specifically towards white men, telling them, here's how you lead women and here's how you lead people of color. And I felt like the conversation needed to go much deeper and much wider, because the whole, workforce has changed. And so it's not just white men that need to know how to lead those different groups. It's everybody needs to know how to lead all these different folks. And so how do you do it? So for me, because I come from an industry where I was truly a unicorn as I was coming up through the ranks, I have lived experiences. Sometimes I knocked it out the park. Sometimes I fell flat on my face, right? But I wanted to write a book, almost like a love letter to leaders, going, listen, I hope these are some tools that can help you. They did, they helped me in a tremendous way. And I hope that these can add some value to you as well, because I know that leadership is hard and it can be lonely. And so I really just wanted a book that would add to leadership and not beat people down about all the stuff we're not doing right. It's hard enough out there. It's complex enough. I wanted a book that's like, listen, here's some simple ways to do this. So Ally, for an example, is an acronym. You need to be a leader who knows how to ask, listen, learn, and you take action. That's the first part. And within that Ally framework is an acronym called EARN, because you don't to declare yourself an ally, you earn it, right? And so EARN stands for that you as a leader must establish an environment where people feel safe enough to share their thoughts, their ideas, and challenge the status quo. The A stands for assure alignment. Everybody on your team needs to know, how does the company win? And more importantly, how do they contribute to that win? R means that you need to rally the troops, right? People don't follow to-do lists, they follow your vision. So you need to know how to paint the vision and get them excited to show up, deliver, and speak up every single day. And then N stands for navigate. You have to let your folks know, they need to know, where's the company going and why, and how are we going to get there and by when, right? So those are the two frameworks that I work on throughout the book, and just keep it super simple with real live examples that they can use, and simple little thoughts at the end of each chapter that they can challenge themselves to do, because I don't want to make this overly complicated. The truth of the matter is, Elisa, you have kids, right?
I don't
You
know.
don't have kids? Okay, well, I have kids, but you've probably been around little kids, nieces and nephews. And if you watch any little kid in a playground, they already know how to play with people who are not like them, right? Uh, we watch it, little kids, we all have it instinctively. It's life that beats it out of us, right? And then all of a sudden it becomes this complex, like, how do you do it? Well, you knew how to do it when you were 2, right? You knew how to do it when you were 5. So I'm just challenging people to go back to the basics, because we were actually born with it. So I spent a lot of time in the book talking about the science of bias in the brain, and how the brain, resists things that are not familiar with them, or to it, like people who are not, like you. And then there's just things that you can do to override the brain to make that not your predictive machine, but you feed it more information, it does different things. And so that's part of what I talk about in the book. So it's not just the to-dos, it's also the science behind how we got here.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing some of that framework. I think that'll be
Yeah.
really helpful for people. I know that, you can't answer the question in a sentence. They have to read the book.
Yeah.
But how do we lead people who aren't like us? Like, what are some of the key skills or practices that we all need to be cultivating?
Yeah, that's good. So first thing I would say is to come in with an attitude of curiosity. A lot of times we talk about empathetic leaders, and you should be an empathetic leader. But I'm not using that word as much as I'm using the word curiosity. Because I think when you come in with an attitude of curiosity, by default, you're going to ask, listen, you're going to learn some stuff. And then now, because of that, we don't want you just to have awareness. We want you to actually execute. So that's when you now have to take action. And the best example I can give you is, this is Black enterprise. We're all well traveled, right? Is think about whenever you go somewhere to, especially to another country or even just another state, right? You're going because you may be going for business, but while you're there, if you truly ask, listen, learn, and take action, you're going to actually expand your mind by default. And so I'll give you an example. When you go to a different country, you're going to ask questions like, oh my gosh, tell me a little bit about your history or the culture, or, even just where do the locals go and eat? Right. So you're asking questions and you're listening because you're listening. You're not listening with, like, I want you to finish your sentence so I can say what I got to say. Right. You're listening because you really don't know. And then by default, you're learning some stuff and then you're taking action with it. Well, when you think about leading people who are not like you, it is just that simple, which is why I use the word curious. So as a leader, there are simple things you can do. It's just instead of going out to lunch with the same group you always go out to, actually invite somebody else out to lunch that you never have been taken out to lunch before. Look at your table when you're having meetings. Who's not in the meeting, right? Who gets your benefit of the doubt and who just gets your doubt? So what I want to do is I want leaders to start challenging themselves, because if in that area, because here are the facts. Diverse teams, right? And I don't mean diverse just in, age, gender, race, like that. I mean diverse in thought, diverse in background, diverse in schooling, diverse in communication skills. I mean diversity in its totality. So diverse teams are 35% more productive. Diverse teams are 70% more likely to capture new markets, and diverse teams are 36% more profitable. I could go on and on with stats, but I'm going to stop there. So what that means is we as leaders, it is the reason I say I'm not focused on DEI, I'm focused on ROI, is as a leader, your job is to get the right people in the right position to create the right result. That's the job. Like, let's not overcomplicate that. That's job one, right? And the way that you do that is to make sure that, well, if I'm going to have a diverse team who doesn't think alike, act alike, communicate alike, the statistics are clear that they're also more innovative. And right now in business, those who innovate first are the ones who actually have a head start, if you will, right? We are in the season of innovation, right? And so all of these roads point back to not whether it's a man or a woman or they're gay or straight or black or white. It's just, how do I get as much diversity on my team so that they're not thinking alike and don't have the same perspective, because I want them to challenge the status quo, because my job is to get the best result. And statistically, don't take my word for it, Google it, Harvard, McKinsey, Deloitte, statistically, you're going to get that by having teams that don't have a lot of similarities. And so how we do it is keep it super, super simple. I'll even take it one step further. Let's take it away from work because I want to make this incredibly simple. One thing that you can do, like my husband and I just recently did this, is I always wanna put myself in a predicament where not everybody's like me. So I may go, like, I live in Dallas, so we recently did this, a few months ago, is there's a community of Thai Buddhist monks in Dallas. I didn't know that, okay? So, and if you go on Sundays, there's, like, people who will cook authentic Thai food that you can buy, and then the proceeds go and help the monks and all the nonprofit stuff that they do for their community. Okay, so everybody wins in this scenario, right? I get great food. I get to get experience to be around people that I don't know, that I don't wouldn't typically be around. I now get to sit in their beautiful botanical gardens or maybe go look at their temple and just see how that, I'm a woman of faith, but I'm not Buddhist, right? Like, I can go and explore, like, okay, what is it like? What's the etiquette when I go into their temple? Oh, I've got to take my shoes off. Oh, I've got to do that. All of that stuff is for me to learn. Now, I took it away from work because I want people to realize it is just that simple. put yourself in an environment where you're in an environment where now everybody talks your language or looks like you, and go explore their cultural centers. Take your kids with you, so it's not just you, but it's like a family affair, right? Go look at their artwork, go look at their museums or their history or nothing else, just go have a really wonderful dinner. It's not that complicated. Right. So if you do that in your natural life, now all of a sudden, fast forward, go back to work to answer your question. If I'm in at the job and I realize, like, everybody that I tend to ask their opinion about how do you think this project's gonna work, I go to the same people. Why don't I go to somebody else who probably will have a different opinion, hopefully, right? Or if I go into a meeting and I always invite the same people in the meeting because that's where I'm most comfortable and they're gonna pretty much probably agree with me anyway. Well, how about I invite other people to the meeting because they're not gonna agree with me because we're very different. Right? So it's you can take it from one extreme of your personal life to the professional life as well. Either way, my message for leaders is, listen, the world's changing. The expectations have changed. The workforce has changed. The train has left the station now. People who are not like us are not going away. So you either get on board on the train or you get run over by the train. These are your options, right? Because the train's left the station. And so my focus with leaders, and I think most leaders, not the extremes on either side, but most leaders are really like, I want everybody to win. Just tell me how to do it. And so many leaders are afraid of making a mistake because it's become like crazy out there that they're afraid to actually do the common sense stuff because they're afraid of offending somebody or making a mistake or getting socially slaughtered, right? If you do make a mistake. So we've got to give people some grace. I always say all of this stuff is really a head and heart issue because, and you and we're both minorities. You will get this, what I'm getting ready to say. We know that if you say something to us and perhaps it's offensive, but what we're checking for is not what you said necessarily, it's how you said it, right? Because we know it's a head and heart issue. Now, if we can tell that you said something stupid, but you don't even know that you just said something stupid, we're going to give you grace. Why? Because that wasn't your intention, right? You just didn't know. And so that's what I want people to think about when I think about leading people who are not like you. It is a head and heart issue. It's okay that you've probably always asked the same people in your little circle about the advice or what project we should work on or how we should do stuff. But now that you know better, simply do better. So, and open up that tent and open up the circle. Invite people who you normally wouldn't invite in the meeting, invite them in. Prep them and coach them so that they're there and they're not just sitting there not saying anything because they're terrified to say the wrong thing. So you're going to have to spend the time, but that's what leadership is. You're going to have to spend the time massaging it and growing them and developing them so that you've created an environment that's a safe space so that people can say, well, I know that that's what Alicia was thinking, but I actually was thinking it a different way. I see it a different way. And here's why, right? That's the kind of healthy conversation you want to be able to have. And that's not for the people to create it. That's for the leader to create that environment.
Hmm. So I know you've said it's not a DEI book, and it's not a DEI
Mhm.
book. But the things that you are talking about are about building an inclusive team and an
For
inclusive
sure.
environment. And
Yeah.
in the world today, especially in the country today, as you mentioned, there are so many minefields. Inclusion is at best a loaded word,
It's a
and
trigger.
there are people who will just be completely turned off at the sound of it.
Yeah.
Should leaders be trying to walk the walk without talking the talk of inclusion now, or should they even worry about the talk of inclusion?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. So, the reason why I love this question so much is because the audience that we're talking to, it's going to all make sense anything I say because we're all living it, right? If we were to take this and then let's flip it and present it to a different audience, right? So here's why I spend so much time talking about the ROI part of it, is because I think that's the equalizer. And so if I'm talking to, our community, well, first of all, I don't really have to talk to our community because we're living it every day, so we get it, right? But the circles that I am in, where I can make the most impact is not necessarily talking to our community because our community gets it. Where I can make the most impact is talking to other communities, right? And so the way that I do that is to talk about the ROI of it, not the DEI of it. because I don't know where DEI trigger points are for people, right? And so, and it's, I don't want to go down that road. And so, what I'd much rather do is do the quotes like I just shared with you, because at the end of the day, we're all actually trying to, especially in business, we're all trying to achieve the same exact thing. So instead of me risking where I'm going to trigger you, I'm going to actually talk about what we're all trying to treat and where I know I won't trigger you, which is to talk about the ROI aspect of it or the percentages of value that diverse teams bring to the table. I don't care how we get there. We just got to get there. Right. And so everybody will have a different way that they go about, singing the same song because we're all saying the same thing. But, for me, where one, probably because of my background as well and what the industry I come from, what I have found the quickest way that I can get to people who can actually make a difference is to spend the time, especially when we're talking about business, is to spend the time not talking about it being the right thing to do, because we all know it's the right thing to do. But then, people are like, well, that's when useless conversations come into play, right? But it's like, okay, I'm not even gonna have that conversation. I'm just gonna have the conversation about it's the smart thing to do. It's the profitable thing to do. Because that then people are like, okay, well, tell me more. Right? I don't care how we get there. We just got to get there. Right. And so then once you open that door up to hear more, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, I'm not trying to shove something down your throat. I'm just simply presenting the facts to you. And that's why I always make the comment, don't listen to me, go Google it. Right? Like, go Google it, because I feel very confident in what you're going to see out there, because the stats and the statistics and the research is clear. Now, I'm just trying to present it in a way that may feel, for some folks, right, less triggering, so that they go, "Oh, okay." Because these are for the people who are like, they want everybody to win. They just don't know how to go about it. Now, the people who are like, "No, I wanna win, I want you to lose," that's not a discussion for them, right? That's not a book for them. It's not, I will not spend 2 seconds of my time with them. But that's the extremes, right? They're the small little, people that have a very loud voice, and unfortunately media gives them a lot of attention. But most people, it's been my experience, most of us are like, I want you to win, I want to win. And that's not a race thing. I just feel like most people are normal functioning human beings, kind of come lean that way. And so therefore, then what I tend to do is talk about just the statistics of it all and the data of it all, because we're all trying to win in business, and business is hard enough. And so most people are looking for that competitive advantage. And I'm just here to say, based on my experience, your competitive advantage is actually having people who are not like you on your team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before we let you go, I know
Mhm.
our community gets it because our community lives it, but I still have to ask
Mm.
what your best advice is for Black executives specifically who are always in corporate America leading people who are not like them,
Yeah.
and for whom having allies is a literal lifeline. So, what gems can you share for us?
Yeah. So the first thing is, having allies is a lifeline, and to, and you also want to be an ally, right? Because once you get to the top, you got to turn around and figure out how you're going to help as well. And I say that because I had an interesting conversation with my cousin, who's she's a partner at one of the big four consulting firms, and she's also a pastor. And so we were having this whole discussion, and I'm 10 toes down with this, leading people who are not like you. And I said, but when I was coming up through the ranks, I don't know if I was as focused. Like, now I'm just like, it is a calling, it's my purpose, and I am like, and I am focused, right? But something she said to me was really interesting, and I think this will lend itself to answer your question. She says, when you were going up the ranks and you were just trying to slay the dragons and survive, you didn't have time to focus on this. I was just trying to survive, right? And I got there. And then once I got there, then I could go, whew, okay, I made it. Now, based on this platform, how can I make sure it's easier for the next, round of people that have to do it? And so that's why I made a comment saying it's great to have allies, but to also be an ally as well. And that's the season that I'm in, is I can turn around and go, let me throw you the rope, right? And help you climb up it, because I couldn't do it when I was trying to do it, but I can certainly do it now. So what I would say for leaders, especially people from the African American community or just Black folks in general, is you want to be really mindful. So let me start with, all of us are a brand. Now, we work for a brand, but we also are a personal brand. And I know people, when I think of personal brand, I think of social media. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you work in an organization, you have a personal brand. So the question you have to ask yourself as an executive or a leader is, what does your personal brand stand for? So earlier you asked me a question. I asked my team, if you were to describe me and my leadership, what would you say? And they said, you're fair, you're tough, you're fun. Well, that's part of my personal brand, right? So now why that matters is because everything I do at work, and this is for your leaders, everything you're doing every single day at work, it should be working towards either confirming your personal brand, right? Because at the end of the day, I think Carla Harris said this, and I completely agree with her. Every major decision that's going to be made about your career, you won't be in the room. You just won't be there. But what will, she didn't say this part, but I'm adding this part. What will be in the room is your personal brand. So you decide how you want people to talk about it when you're not in the room. So that means every single day, that's what you're working towards. Is your work excellent? Is it on time? Do you say and do what you say you're going to do, right? Are you a good leader? Or are you just like out for yourself? Do you lift up your team, or are you a nightmare for your team? All of those things is part of your personal brand. And so now, now I'm in the board level, so I'm looking at, the challenges that companies have retaining talent, attracting talent, so on and so forth. And so really I should say we to talk for everybody, but where most boards are looking at when it comes to talent and labor is we want people who are more globally focused. We're a global world, right? And so you want people who know how not just to lead themselves, but they know how to lead a team and they know how to get the best out of that team. And I've already shared the stats of what the best, setting yourself up to get the best, what kind of team you need to be looking for, which is a team that's completely opposite of you, right? And so all of those things matter. So as a leader, and especially as an African American, I don't have to tell you, you know that the stakes are higher for you, and the criteria that you'll be judged on is not always fair. And so knowing that it is what it is, until we can get this change, it is what it is. And so knowing that, what I really want leaders to just really to really focus in on is your stuff has to be solid. Do not give anybody wiggle room because your stuff's a little sloppy, or you're always late, or your emotions are up and down. Don't give anybody that extra space to just to realize, like, yeah, you know what, maybe not this one, right? This person is not ready for this type of promotion or overseas project or whatever. Don't give anybody that kind of room. Define what your brand's going to be, and then every day work towards making sure that everybody knows that your brand message and the brand that you represent, which is yourself, is consistent. And so that's what I would say is, just do good work. And realize, be strategic too. The people who get promoted are not the ones who do the best work, unfortunately. And they're the ones that are the most visible. And so you don't want to be look at me, and you're visible with just like your all mouth. We all know those types. You want to be look at me because I actually produce results. And so that's the type of, swagger you're looking for, right? Because that's what people want to go, okay, let's give, Alicia an opportunity because her work's excellent. She's excellent. She gets along with everybody. She knows how her team is crushing it. Her team is so, different, but yet they perform, they excel. Like, let's give her an opportunity. And then you go in there and then you take that position and you crush it, right? And then that then says, okay, let's give her, a bigger piece of this pie. And then you go and you crush it there. And then eventually you're going to also be able to go like, let me turn around and who else can I help as I'm pulling up? Right. So this is how the whole thing works. We all know it. It's not rocket science, but sometimes what happens is we kind of get into like every man for himself. Right. And so we're not doing the basics, but it's really important now. And one thing I'm extremely proud of with our community is, there's this election stuff shook a lot of things, but one thing it did do, especially with Black women, it got us all on one page. Right? We were like, we are united. We're going to use this force for good. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. I'm sad how we got here, but it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. But we're here now.
We're here now. Exactly. Exactly. And by the way, we're crushing it. Right?
Yeah.
We just as Black women in general are just crushing it, So it's awesome. Awesome to see.
This has been so enlightening. Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing the unique ways you're helping us make the most of the time we've been given by turning us into better, smarter, and more effective leaders.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This was really a delight. Best call of the day.
Of course. And thank you all for watching On the Clock with Women of Power. You can find more insight and inspiration for working with purpose and living with passion on our website, blackenterprise.com, and on our YouTube. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.
I am doubly honored to receive the Earl Graves Senior Vanguard Award, named after Bee's founder. Mr. Graves was always a guiding light for me and many others. He always had advice, a kind word, and even a playful jab for me.
Coming here lifts my spirits because I know that no matter what happens around us, I think we have a chance to do some great things.
Networking is extremely important.
This is a conference I definitely will look forward to coming to.
Excellence is the base. That's the base. The goal is exceptionalism.
Anybody that is a business person needs to be here.
For 5 decades, we've had your back. Black Enterprise have everything you need to elevate your excellence.